Good morning, world.
Good morning, Michigan. Rich Kincaid in this AM for Michael Patrick. I'll be with you tomorrow as well, and then Michael Patrick will be back next week. And boy, do I feel foolish this morning, Amanda. I got up at 3:30. Amanda K. Wall, our producer, as always, in studio, lovely, talented, etc. I was going to say we try to get you to blush first thing. It gets our morning off to the right start. But I woke up this morning about 3:30, as is my wont. Well, actually, I wouldn't do it if I didn't have a choice. But you like to be prepared before you come in and do the big electric radio show. So I'm up at 3:30 and I'm scanning my internet, and I've got the information on the Pistons getting beat by Chauncey Billups last night, and the Red Wings getting their victory, and the latest, such as it is, on the Corey Lucius situation. As you know, he's been suspended for the rest of the year, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Hop into the car shortly before 5 o'clock, so I'll be here in plenty of time, and I got on the wrong freeway. And I'm driving along, and I'm thinking, shouldn't I be seeing the state capitol, pretty soon here? And it turns out, when I needed to be on 496, I was on I-69, and I was heading in totally the wrong direction. When I phoned you this morning, I was in Charlotte, which is a little out of position, So
there was we went to see a comedy show, and the gentleman said that he had come from the Detroit area, and he goes, I don't know who created your highway system, but there's 96 and 69 and 496, and when I asked for directions, that's how they gave them to me. And he was like, how come you guys couldn't have used other numbers?
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
So you would have known that you were getting onto a different highway.
Yeah, and I'm out there just driving along, and actually one, at least here in mid-Michigan, and I suspect it's the same in other parts of our listening audience this morning, take a little care. There were some light flurries overnight, just enough to slicken up the roads a little bit. So you might fishtail a little bit, just be mindful of that. There's some black ice out there as the temperature's hovering around the freezing mark and what have you. So just be careful, take it easy, and I'm here with you now. I'm happy about that. Gary Austin was on time this morning, and he's standing.
I was, and you guys talk about a harrowing drive, certainly, but how about taking to the skies? For those flying, it's going to be a nightmare supreme today because the eastern seaboard again is getting battered.
Again.
And we have backup flights right now. So if you're flying, for example, out of anywhere in Michigan, if you have a plan, let's say to go to the East Coast, business, pleasure, vacation, whatever the case may be, I tell you, the experts are saying get there early and anticipate delays. They're already backing up, and my gosh, it's not even 7 o'clock yet, so what a mess.
Yeah, it seems like every other week this year, Boston, for example, has picked up a 10-inch snowfall. It has happened to them again in this situation, and they're having a rough go of it. Hey, and I say, you know what I say, more power to them, better them than us. Because it could just as easily be us.
It sure could. We're going to get the tail end of that, by the way. Oh, this just in. This winter blast has now shut down 2 big airports in New York. JFK International.
Wow.
That is closed. And in New Jersey, Newark International. That one shut down,
Yikes.
too. Actually, that one closed last night.
Yeah.
And, I tell you, it's expected to reopen at 7 o'clock tonight. So it looks like Newark's going to be shut down all day today. So
wow, then that'll take them 3 or 4 or 5 days to recycle to get everybody who was bumped today onto a flight and out of there. So that's always a. Speaking of transportation, Gary Austin, the first Chevy Volt in Michigan has been sold to a Lansing man, Mark
Isn't that
Lee.
neat?
Yeah,
this guy, he couldn't wait, so he flew to New York and picked one up and drove it back. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it really is. They're not yet available here at dealerships, and I like the way he found out about it. He was on a Chevy Volt message board. Who even knew there was such a thing? Yeah. And a dealer in New York State said, I've got Volts. Anybody want one? And as soon as he heard the same day, he hops a flight to New York, and he drove his Volt back. And Amanda's working on tracking him down, so we'd like to chat with Mark Lee.
We're going to get him on this morning.
Oh, well, there you go. See, when Amanda says we're going to get him on this morning, he's going to be on this
That's
morning.
Neat. Apparently, this guy, he's a real techno guy. You know, he's into engines, he's into cars, and he likes the techno thing. And the Volt for him is like a perfect marriage between the old technology of the automobile, 4 wheels, rubber hitting the road, and then the brand new innovative technology business involving this electric motor. So the first Chevy Volt officially, and it's going to be cool. Be talking to him here shortly.
All right. In Grand Rapids, 6 middle school students, Alger middle school students, have been suspending for posting on YouTube a video of 2 students fighting. It's, once again, our technology age. It gets posted online and it is there forever. Now you've got middle school kids fighting on YouTube and students being suspended.
You're right. It's there forever. And like the state police, big old billboards, we see them all over the state now. Once you post it, you can't delete it. And that's true of whether it's the internet by way of Facebook or whether it's, something you do on your home computer. Before you hit that send button, think twice, because once it's gone forever. And there it is forever for everybody to see, especially. Boy, I tell you, you really have to be careful about that sort of thing. We talked about this before, about how some people, they might be a little edgy, a little bit too much caffeine, let's say, and they're ticked off at somebody,
right,
and they've got something scathing they're about to send, and they're just about to, think twice. Hey, talk about high-tech business. Yeah. Here's a guy who's really into his Facebook, right? Really big-time Facebook. And for some reason, his account was disabled. And he said, hold on a second here. This was done for no apparent reason. And Rich and Amanda, this guy is so hopping mad. He's 39. He's from Staten Island, New York. He's suing Facebook for $500,000. He's that upset because
he might win.
He's gonna lose.
He might win.
No, you click a privacy policy thing, and they have the ability to shut off your account whenever they want. You don't pay for the service.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
So I highly doubt that he's going to be. Just sign up for another one.
Sounds like a case for Royal Oaks.
Well, what really ticked this guy off, okay, first of all, he's disabled, right? And then, he tries to get in touch with Facebook. And then what really got him ticked off, he got no response from Facebook. That pushed him over the edge. So he says, God darn, I'm taking those people to court.
My daughter told me this week that I would be a happier human being if I simply deleted my Facebook account. She apparently has deleted all of her friends but 5 or 6. And I told her I use it. My needs for Facebook are a little different than hers, which are strictly social, but I use mine to stay in touch with professional contacts, that sort of thing. But she said she actually is a happier person without the Facebook and without all the drama that goes on the Facebook. Well, she's a high school student, and there's some amazingly distressing things that get posted on Facebook. Students carry on disputes with one another, and the gossiping and all the rest of it. So my daughter's advice to everybody is just go ahead and delete that account. What do you make of this proposal by Senate Republican Mike Green? He says it's not a case of too many guns, or he says guns should be legal. People who have a carry permit should be able to carry their guns in the state of Michigan anywhere they want to. Yeah. That includes sports stadiums, schools, university dormitories, classrooms, daycare centers, churches, hospitals, and casinos.
Well, Mike Green's contention is this, and there are many who support him on this, guys. He says,
I don't.
Well, as it stands right now, here's his argument. Now, listen, he says, okay, the bad guys know that if you go into any of those places that you just outlined, Rich, that those who are law-abiding, they're going to follow the rules. They will not be armed. So the bad guy knows if I go into one of those places, odds are no one's going to be armed, and I can do whatever I want. I can hold them up. I can go on a shooting rampage. I can do whatever I want because I know I'm the only one in there that's going to have a gun. Now, that's Mike Green's contention.
I
understand. Says that's the reason why
the
law should be changed. So you say?
Well, I say it's crazy.
Why?
Because it stands to reason the more guns you have, the more people are going to be using their guns, and the more people are going to be injured. The hero of Tucson, the person who wrestled the gun away from Gerald Lofter himself, was almost shot by a bystander who was armed. They don't have a concealed carry law in Arizona. You can just pack a gun anytime you want. You don't need a permit for it or anything. And it was very close to turning into an even greater tragedy.
Yeah, that's the contention. If you get too many guns about and then someone becomes, shoot happy, and then we run into more serious problems. So, that's the ongoing argument. But I bet you, though, guys, in this legislature, when compared to other state legislatures that have been in session, this one, with Republicans in charge from top to bottom, there's a good chance that Mike Green's revision of this concealed carry law, could actually pass maybe this year.
I don't want a gun in my church.
Could happen.
I don't want a gun in my church. That's all I'm saying. Controversial ruling yesterday: state employees, same-sex partners to get health benefits. That's going to stir the pot.
Yeah, it sure is. This is something that Governor Snyder is opposed to. It'll be curious to see where this one goes because you have, this is something that one group voted to approve, and where it heads from here and what kind of a potential legal battle this could stir up is also in question as well. There are many who say it's only right that this should be approved as is. Others say it shouldn't be. It deserves more scrutiny. So we'll see. You can count on the Snyder administration giving that one a good hard look before it goes anywhere. Talk about problems that people are having financially. This home foreclosure business, is it ever going to end? Realty Trek out with another study. Things are just getting worse. Everything's on hold for a while banks had to resort all their financial business because of new government rules and regs. And because they were so busy doing that, they had to put a hold on all of the foreclosures. So you have a big pile, a stack of papers that have been sort of waylaid because these banks and financial institutions have had to do other things. Well, now they've got those other things done. Now they're going to tackle this pile of foreclosures.
I would recommend that.
And they say a big spike in foreclosures between now and the end of the year because of that.
I'd recommend anybody Google Matt Taibbi and his piece in Rolling Stone on foreclosures. Turns out the banks are losing a lot of that paperwork, and they're scrambling to make up documents. And there may be a remedy, legal remedy, in that for people who face foreclosure. That's Matt Taibbi in Rolling Stone. Gary, great to talk to you as always. Have a nice one.
Thanks, Rich. You too.
All right, we'll take a break, come back, and talk about missing children as we continue. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick here on this Thursday morning. And Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick on this Thursday morning. It's cliche in the media to talk about a parent's greatest nightmare, but being a parent, I can certainly attest to the fact that my daughter going missing would be my greatest nightmare. Be right up there with the worst thing that could possibly happen. And it turns out every year in this country, nearly 800,000 children go missing in these United States. And this morning we are here to talk about a program being launched by Comcast with an eye towards finding some of those young people, as we're joined right now by Ernie Allen, the president and CEO of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and along with Diana Wessler-Kirks, the vice president, Kairkosh. Thank you, Amanda. Kairkosh. I'm sorry, Diana. We'll get this right by the time all is said and done. She's the Vice President of Entertainment Services for Comcast Cable. What do the Center for Missing and Exploited Children have to do with Comcast? And that's what we're going to talk about this morning. Mr. Allen, thanks for joining us, and tell us about this relationship, this new relationship between your organization and Comcast.
Well, Rich, thank you for the opportunity. We think this is an extraordinary new initiative through the leadership of Comcast. Comcast is providing missing child vignettes, 2 to 3 minute profiles on a group of missing children through their on-demand service, which is going to reach 20 million people across America. We know that photos, information helps bring missing children home. What we're trying to do is to reach everybody in this country with the best possible images and information. We're convinced that somebody knows where these kids are. We want them to call us at 1-800-THE-LOST. We think that Comcast leadership in this area is going to help us find more missing children, reunite more families.
Diana Kairkosh from Comcast is with us. How people might confuse this with, say, an Amber Alert. How does this differ, and how is it going to work exactly, specifically?
We're using our platforms. We're leveraging our platforms with our huge reach, as Ernie said, with over 20 million, nearly 20 million subscribers, to get the word out. It's another touch point. This is a natural fit for us. We've used our platform in the past to generate awareness for different causes. We started with a program called Police Blotter, where we partnered with local law enforcement. It's helped capture over 90 criminals, which is amazing. We hope to have the same success rate. If we're able to find and help find one missing child, that's huge for that family. So again, it's another touch point. It's a way to get these photos out there. People, our customers, come to On Demand over 350 million times a month. So to have these photos up there and have an ability for people to see them both on demand and online, again, it's another touch point. It's another way to get these words out. And it was just a great natural fit. So we're thrilled that we can use our platforms to try to help.
Well, Diana, how exactly will people go about accessing? According to the release I'm Holding in My Hand, Kids on Demand, Missing Kids on Demand, I should say, will feature 20 video profiles of missing child cases from across the country, 10 more to be added on a monthly basis. How would a Comcast customer or anyone else be able to access that information?
A Comcast customer can go to their On Demand. They can push that big button on their remote that says On Demand, or they can go to Channel 1 and they can go into their local offerings and find this offering there. They can also go onto Xfinity.com under the news section and also find all the profiles there. So we're making it very, very easy for our customers to find it. And really, again, it's another touch point that's going to reach nearly 20 million subscribers.
Is it available to non-subscribers? Can they go to a website, for example?
They can go onto Xfinity.com under news.
Okay. And Ernie Allen, President and CEO of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Tell us about your hopes for this program.
Well, our hopes are that by taking this into homes, by providing this kind of content directly to people in their homes on television, which is such an integral part of their lives, that we're going to reach more sets of eyes. And we have purposefully, you asked earlier, Rich, about the difference with the Amber Alert. The Amber Alert is a rapid response where there is key descriptive information to provide to the public. We have purposefully chosen a range of cases, many of which won't qualify for the Amber Alert, but we need help on all of these cases. So some of them are stranger abductions. Some of them are parental abductions, where we think the child is in risk and the taking of the child is a crime. Some of them are endangered runaways, where we believe that the kid's in peril on the street somewhere. So what this enables us to do is do more than just put a photograph in front of a citizen. Each one of these, Comcast has produced 2 to 3 minute profiles that show you the photo, tell you something about the child and the circumstances. We think this is really unprecedented, and if the American people will use it, will access it, we are confident it's going to bring kids home.
Speaking of which, the statistic that we hear so often, nearly 800,000 children go missing in the United States every year. How many of those children are found?
Well, 99%. The good news is today in this country there is a system. Law enforcement is better prepared. The public is more vigilant, is looking at these pictures of missing kids. The good news is that the vast majority of America's missing children come home safely. The bad news is that still thousands of kids each year don't make it home, and that's why these programs are so important, and that's why Comcast's leadership in this area is so important.
Diana, let's say someone has access to the service, Missing Kids on Demand, and they actually recognize one of the young people. What's the next step?
So the next step, in each of the videos that we have up there, we have the toll-free number for the National Center, and we also have their website, and we encourage everybody to reach out and call that national number and also look at that website and report any and all tips.
You've got to be pretty excited about this. This is a great thing for Comcast to be doing.
It really is, and as I said, it leverages things that we've done in the past. So as I said, we've partnered with local law enforcement, with our police blotter. We were able to partner with Stand Up to Cancer and generate a lot of awareness for them and Pink Ribbon. So it's truly a phenomenal thing that we're able to use our technology and platforms just to generate more awareness. And as we said before, if we're able to help bring one kid home, that's amazing.
Well, and I'm confident you will, as soon as you bring that first kid home, it's going to snowball, right? You'll get publicity from that. More people will access the service. You'll have greater success with it. It seems to me.
That's the hope. And as I said before, our customers are using On Demand over 350 million times a month. So they're there, they're using it, they're looking at this platform. So we're confident that they're going to find this content. We're going to, make sure they're there and they're seeing it both on demand and online, and hopefully it'll bring some results.
Diana, I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
That's quite all right. Thank you for having us this morning.
Absolutely. Diana Karakesh and Ernie Allen, the president and CEO of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Mr. Allen, it's great work you're doing. Continued success with it.
Thank you, Rich.
Okay. And thank you to both of our guests this morning. And again, the service, Missing Children on Demand. And again, you can access that on Comcast Cable and online as well. I thought that was the best news out of that particular segment, that interview there, the fact that of those 800,000 children that go missing every year, 99% of them find their way home. So, but even so, let's see, 99%, 800,000, you're still talking about several thousand who in point of fact, did not make their way home, who are still missing. So hopefully that number will be reduced with this new service available. It's online now, as a matter of fact, from Comcast. Other news, making news this morning. It's been ruled that former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick will be able to review the government's evidence against him in his ongoing corruption case. This is the result of an order from U.S. District Court Judge Nancy Edmonds. Kirkpatrick asked to listen to thousands of phone calls and to look at hundreds of thousands of text messages which have been collected by the FBI. The ex-mayor, his father Bernard Kilpatrick, and 3 other men indicted last month, as you know, on several charges including bribery, extortion, and fraud for allegedly rigging bids on city contracts. A Rochester Hills man, a 57-year-old, is facing charges in connection with the shooting of another man on Monday. David Deaton was arraigned yesterday on the charge of assault with intent to commit murder. The gun used in the shooting Sunday of 4 Detroit police officers has been traced back to an ex-convict. Investigators say the 20-gauge shotgun used by Lamar Moore was purchased from a convict, Elijah Gayden, last year. It's not known exactly how Moore obtained that weapon. After Moore shot the police officers, he himself was shot and was killed. An Oakland University professor is no longer teaching at Oakland U. He's been charged with stalking a former female student. 43-year-old Shirhan Sharma, an associate professor in Oakland University's School of Business Administration, has been arraigned on a misdemeanor charge of stalking. That's a troubling story when you have a college professor stalking one of his students there, as a matter of fact. All right? And also, just in the news this morning, a Lansing man, Mark Lee, has become the first Michigan resident to purchase a Chevy Volt. He found the car online at a dealership in New York, flew to New York, bought the car, and drove it back to Michigan. And it's sitting in a garage somewhere in Lansing right now, the very first Volt being sold here, or being sold to a Michigan residence. The Rapids bus system will ask voters in 6 cities for a tax increase. That'll be coming up on the May 3rd ballot, this according this morning to mlive.com. And one other story we wanted to get to. Speaking of electric cars, Vice President Joe Biden has announced a goal of 1 million electric vehicles on the road by the year 2015. He made those remarks while speaking yesterday in Indiana. Joe Biden was in Indiana, and President Obama yesterday followed up his State of the Union address with remarks at an industrial complex in the state of Wisconsin. All right, we will turn our attention directly to the situation at Michigan State, the basketball program. Normally, on a day like this, everybody, we'd just be excited. Michigan's coming to town. It's Michigan State tonight at the Breslin Center. A lot of things going on off the court with respect to the Spartans. We'll talk about that and a little bit more with Ron Cameron, the Detroit sports talk show host, who will join us directly. My name is Rich Kincaid. I'm in this morning for Michael Patrick Shields, and we'll have more for you right after this. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick today. We want to know what you think. A lot of topics, hot-button topics, I guess they would be called. You've got the issue of whether or not guns should be permitted anywhere, in church, in schools, anywhere in the state of Michigan. A state lawmaker is proposing that if you've got a concealed carry permit, you should be able to carry your gun anywhere you go. And that includes sports arenas, schools, churches, all the rest of it. What do you think about that? Same-sex partners are being granted health insurance benefits by the state of Michigan. This according to the state Civil Rights Commission. What do you think about that? Let us know. 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966, the number to call, or send us an email at mpsbigshow at AOL.com, mpsbigshow at AOL.com. Also, the Corey Lucius situation. I have not heard anything, nothing that I would attribute with respect to why Corey Lucius, the guard for the Michigan State basketball team, has been suspended for the balance of this season. I don't know what he did. We only know that he's had a very troubled season. Late in August, he was involved in that situation where he was arrested for being over the limit, had a .9 blood alcohol level. Problem is, at the time, Corey's only 20. Legal drinking age is, of course, 21, so you've got kind of a double whammy there. He was allowed to stay on the team, but for reasons that Michigan State is not releasing, he was yesterday suspended for the balance of the current season. Nobody knows why. There are rumors out there. There's innuendo out there, but I don't think it's really proper to go to some guy's blog and say, oh, so-and-so says so-and-so, and that's the reason. And when we get some information, if we get some information on what happened, we will, of course, pass that along to you, but we don't traffic. At least we try not to traffic in rumors, especially in a situation like this. Michigan home tonight, I should say Michigan State home tonight to take on Michigan. Almost as big a surprise to me, the fact, other than the fact that Michigan State began the year ranked number 2 in the nation and has struggled mightily this year with a 12-7 record overall, and they're 4-3 in Big Ten play, is the fact that Michigan comes into this game tonight at 1-6. I don't think anybody predicts Michigan would win the Big Ten, but I also don't think anybody thought Michigan would be a 1-6 basketball team in conference play at this point in the season. They have struggled tremendously this year, and frankly, I'm at a bit of a loss to understand why. But hey, being here in town, I get to go to the game tonight, so we will be able to come in tomorrow and talk about that. We will look forward to that. Always fun when Michigan State and Michigan get together to play anything, isn't it?
It is. It's definitely an interesting game tonight with the rumors that Coach Beilein might be leaving U of M, and then the Corey Lucius situation. It kind of makes tonight's game even more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely right. One, as we talked about briefly with Michael Patrick yesterday, if there's a bright spot in this, and I know that's not phrasing it correctly to call it a bright spot, but it is the fact that Corey Lucius has struggled this year. He has not played up to the standards that he has set for himself. His field goal percentage, 40.4%, the lowest of any Michigan State player, and in three-point attempts, he's shooting 28.4%. So he hasn't been getting it done. Nonetheless, I have to believe you would rather have him in there and part of your team than to be forced into a situation where you have to suspend him, as Tom Izzo was forced to do the night before last. And that curious tweet from Corey Lucius also caught everyone's attention, where he posted a tweet at roughly the same time it was announced that he'd been suspended for the year, saying, I really, and I'm quoting here, I really screwed up this time, got to go to the gym. He's not saying what it is that he did. He's admitting he screwed up in some fashion, but how that manifested itself, he is, in point of fact, not saying. So Michigan State, Michigan tonight at the Breslin Center. That's a 7 o'clock tip-off, by the way. So, as I say, we'll be at that. Michigan State hockey team is in action tonight at Ferris State. Rick Comley yesterday announcing that this is his last season as Spartan hockey coach. He's been there 9 years, part of a coaching career which has spanned almost 40 years now. As a matter of fact, and Coach Comley led Michigan State, of course, to the national championship in 2007. Really an all-around good guy. I've liked him from the time I met him, and you could tell in his press conference yesterday that he was moved, emotionally affected by the fact that he is leaving the program at season's end. We will be joined by Coach Comley next hour. We'll get more information for you on that situation. Going back to basketball just briefly. A great story developing, or has been developing for some time. Steve Fisher, the former coach of the University of Michigan Wolverines. Remember, he took over the Michigan program back in 1988 when Bill Frieder was fired right before the NCAA tournament, fired because he was talking with another school about a job. So Steve Fisher stepped in right before the tournament and led Michigan all the way through that NCAA tournament. He was the coach of the Wolverines during the Fab 5 days, and of course, when all the problems broke with respect to the boosters paying the Fab Five, Steve Fisher was fired. He has resurfaced at San Diego State, and he has taken a program from nowhere all the way to 4th in the nation right now. San Diego State, in fact, sustained their first loss of the season last night, leaving Ohio State as the only undefeated team in college basketball. But Steve Fisher has turned things, in spite of a loss last night, he's really turned things around at San Diego State, a 17-1 record and a number 4 ranking nationally. All right, we'll take a break, come back with more for you. Rich Kincaid and for Michael Patrick as Thursday morning marches on. Man, I love that song. In the radio business, you're supposed to, as they say, let the music establish. Let the music play for a few seconds, and then you begin talking. But I'm not going to talk over the Michigan State fight song. In fact, I was guilty right there of a violation. The Michigan State fight song was being played, and I did not stand up. Whenever, if you're an MSU student, grad, when they play the fight song, you stand up. It's the rules, okay? And I didn't because, well, I'm in the middle of something here. But anyways, Michigan State tonight in college basketball, and I'm excited about that. I get to go. How about that?
And they're playing in hockey at the Joe.
Oh, that's right. It's
weekend.
on Saturday. Exactly right. So, at any rate. But, of course, when I say I get to go, I can't go cheer. I'll be there representing the Michigan Talk Network, representing Michael Patrick Shields. So I'll be on press row. And there's no cheering on press row. There's no cheering in the press box. It's actually
inside.
You sort of. I say the only team that I permit myself still to root for, and I was a great fan, when I was growing up. There's no question about that. But the only team I can still cheer for is Michigan State, because I'm an MSU grad. I'm an MSU guy. I mean, that's my school, okay? But as far as the Tigers, Lions, Red Wings, no. I have to sit there and be dispassionate because that's my job now. And in fact, when I go to a sporting event and I'm called upon, I'm in the stands and I'm called upon to cheer, it actually feels odd to me now after all these years, because I've been doing this since the late 1970s. But yeah, that's the first rule. Yeah, these Michigan State football games, the play in overtime against Notre Dame, the fake field goal, place is going crazy, right? I think my reaction was I tapped my pencil on the tabletop. That's because you can't. You have to be a professional. You can't. There are writers there we're not being paid to be fans at that point. We're there to report on the game, and there are writers from Notre Dame and other places, and it would bother them, and so you just don't. It's essentially the first rule and maybe the only rule of being a sports reporter. So now I can sit there and the most exciting thing can happen down there, and my reaction will be, Although I'm saying I'm not saying I don't enjoy it. I do. I just can't jump up and down and what have you. The only time I got excited that I can recall, maybe ever, was in the imperfect game on the last out, when Jim Joyce blew the call at first base and Armando Galarraga lost his perfect game last June. Mm-hmm. And when he made the safe call, I jumped up and I just said, no, like that. Mm-hmm. And that was as demonstrative, I think, as I've ever been. But, boy, that was such an exciting – that was a goosebump night. I mean, to see a perfect game unfold in front of you like that, it was really something. The thing that I will take away from that, and I don't know why this is, but every time I think of that game, I remember – sitting there in the press box, thinking to myself, the game started at 7 o'clock, thinking to myself, it's 8:33, and we're in the bottom of the 8th inning. It just went by so fast, and all of a sudden it was on you. And then when he got to the bottom of the 9th inning, I thought the odds were actually in his favor because the hitters he's scheduled to face are Cleveland's 7th, 8th, and 9th hitters. They're 3 worst hitters. Mm-hmm. So he's gotten to this point. He's now actually, I thought, the odds would favor him at this point. And then the first hitter got up, hit an absolute rocket to center field, and everybody thought it was all over right then, but Austin Jackson outran the ball, made one of the best catches you're ever going to see. And then you're thinking, now he's really going to get it, because in every perfect game there's an improbable play without which there'd be no perfect game. And there it was, the catch by Austin Jackson. But as we know, they muffed the call at the end and cost him the perfect game. And Armando was traded by the Tigers earlier this week to Arizona. And I was wondering, would it have been possible for the Tigers to have traded Galarraga had he, in fact, gotten the perfect game? We'll never know. He didn't. So Amanda, I know you wanted me to get to some news here in this segment, and I've done a very poor job of that. Just and the other thing that's even worse, I didn't do a particularly good job with the sports. The Pistons lost last night to the Denver Nuggets. Chauncey Billups back in the building. Worst trade in Pistons history. Joe Dumars dealing Mr. Big Shot to the Denver Nuggets for Allen Iverson, who just didn't work out at all. And Chauncey Billups said after the game last night, and he had like 26 points, and he had some key three-pointers in the fourth quarter, and he said after the game, I had planned to retire as a Piston. So he's bitter about being traded, and Pistons fans are bitter about him having been traded. Good news for the Red Wings, not just the fact that they beat the Devils last night 3-1. The better news is they're at the All-Star break. They get a week off here, and hopefully they will get some of their injured players back. I was at the game Saturday against Chicago. They had 6 starters not in action due to injury. Tough to win when you're in a situation like that. And when you got guys like Pavel Datsyuk and Thomas Holmstrom and Dan Cleary and Mike Modano all out of the lineup. But they're getting better. And now the Wings will get some rest. They've weathered the storm, I think, and we shall see. We actually have more sports to talk about. MSU hockey coach Rick Comley is going to join us. We're going to talk more about this Corey Lucius situation. And we'd love to hear from you at 888-900-9966. In for Michael Patrick Shields, I'm Rich Kincaid, and we'll be back in just a moment. Good morning, Michigan. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick here on this Thursday. Not as chilly as it was when we were here filling in last week when we looked across the street to Cooley Law Stadium, and the scoreboard or the signage there said it was 2 degrees outside.
It says right now that it is 20 degrees outside.
All right.
So we've added 21. It just went up.
See, we're 10 times warmer this week than we were last week. The winter is bothering me this year. I don't know why, but it's...
Let's be 10 times warmer tomorrow,
Well,
too.
there you go. Yeah, it's 200 degrees, and literally the snow is boiling out there. Joe Rexrode from the Lansing State Journal joins us this morning. And, Joe, the situation that's been going on now for a couple of days, the Corey Lucius dismissal from the MSU basketball team. Nobody's talking about it. I don't imagine nobody knows the specifics of why Corey has been dismissed. The university's tight-lipped, as they always are in these situations, and nothing concrete to report, I imagine.
Right. Well, yeah, nothing concrete on the record to report on that. But, you know, if you look at Corey's last year or so, I mean, he's obviously had some other problems, and he's had some second chance, third chance. I don't know. I haven't counted them all up, but he's certainly, been in the doghouse some, and on probation now after the reckless driving, which came in the fall. Was arrested, first charged with the driving while intoxicated. So, I don't think we're ever going to get the exact answer, just like with Chris Allen, on what exactly was the final straw. But it's pretty amazing to see this program dismiss 2 players in a 6-month span. It
has interested many people that he was dismissed for the remainder of this season, leaving the door open to his return next season.
Right, and that's it is interesting, and it's kind of hard to figure out. And his mom gave a statement actually to SpartanNation.com yesterday that he was going to be done, and then Tom Izzo was going to help them find a school at the semester. And I called Corey and his mom yesterday, and they both kind of said, well, we're not sure what's going to happen. Maybe there is a chance. Michigan State's not talking about it at all.
Right.
I actually did talk to Tom Izzo yesterday, and he just said, I'm not talking about it, and he's not going to talk about it until after the season, if at all. So it's kind of one of those strange situations. I mean, my guess is that Corey Lucius will transfer, and that he is done at Michigan State. But like you said, the door's kind of open still, and until Corey Lucius tells us where he's going or that he's going, I guess there's always that chance.
Joe Rexrode, our guest from the Lansing State Journal. Joe, it's been a disastrous season for Michigan State. I don't know that there's any other way you can put it. They were ranked number 2. I don't have to tell you, ranked number 2 nationally when the season began, and here they are, 12-7. 4-3 in the Big Ten, just struggling. They're ranked 100th nationally in points per game at 72.6. They're 145th in the nation in field goal percentage. This is the same basketball team that made the Final Four last year. And that's what everybody's asking. What happened?
Yeah, well, that's one thing we learned is that it's not the same. And to me, the big difference is Raymar Morgan. I mean, I think Raymar Morgan was one of those guys who, for 4 years, people complained about him. He pouts too much and he's inconsistent, this and that. But you see what his value was. But hey, I mean, every team loses seniors and great players, and this team did have a lot back, no question. I mean, Kalen Lucas, and that's another thing. I mean, he hasn't been 100% healthy yet from the Achilles injury. I think, if there's one thing that I thought was going to happen this year after the tournament was the way the light went on for Darrell Summers in that tournament. He really carried that team, along with Morgan and Draymond Green, to the Final Four after Kalen Lucas went down last year. And Summers has kind of gone back to kind of being inconsistent, struggling, disappearing for stretches. So that's one thing. And I just think some of these freshmen as well, I thought they would have a bigger impact than they have. Keith Appling's a very good defensive player, but hasn't had as much impact on offense. And Adrian Payne is a guy who you watch him work out and you say, hey, it's Rasheed Wallace Jr. I mean, he could be, I think he can very well be an NBA player, a prominent NBA player someday. But right now, he's still struggling to get himself on the floor.
Is Appling the key right now? He's the guy that's got to step up with Lucius gone?
Yeah, I think there's no question he's now going to have to play some point guard. I think Kalen Lucas will, what they'd like to do a lot this year is have Lucius at the point, and then Kalen Lucas play off the ball and try to get him shots. I think Kalen Lucas now plays, strictly point guard. And I think Michigan State will probably also go big more often. We'll use a center and then use Draymond Green and Delvon Rowe with a center, and that way, the perimeter depth or the lack thereof now is not as exposed. So I think Thomas will probably tinker with a few different things. And then, Mike Keebler and Austin Thornton also could be in line for more minutes as well.
Did the situation with Tom Izzo and his narrowly remaining at Michigan State, has that had an effect on the way the team has played this year?
I've heard that. I mean, I can't say that I would really come to that conclusion, but it certainly has been an incredible year of headlines and adversity and different things happening. It's interesting the day Tom Izzo announced that he was staying, the first kid up there to mess up his hair and kind of give him a big hug was Corey Lucius, and it seemed like, and then off that, Michigan State had a huge recruiting run over the summer, and, things looked like they couldn't be going any better, but, I mean, you never know how things like that are going to affect players, and there are so many outside factors, I think more so today even than there were 5 years ago. I mean, I think Twitter is something that it's just amazing how prominent that is and how much of a factor it is with these players and just their interaction with the public. And so many distractions. You have Lucas and Summers are seniors, and they're thinking about their NBA futures. And, I mean, it's a more complex deal, I think, than some people realize when you're talking about, getting 13 guys all going in the same direction.
If you've got a team that's struggling at midseason, or in this case slightly beyond the midseason point, Tom Izzo has always been thought of as the guy you would want to have as your coach. He's got a tremendous record in terms of turning teams around in midseason. Is he going to be able to do that this year? And I guess the frightening question is it possible that Michigan State could miss the NCAA tournament? They're not a lock right now at 12-7.
No, they're not. It's funny. I thought before this happened, and I kind of, even though they lost those two games last week, I think you're seeing signs that they're playing better in some areas. They're not turning the ball over like they were so much early in the year. They're rebounding better. I really thought, watch out. This team really could be something else here in a few weeks if it keeps progressing. But now you take Lucius out, and I don't know. I mean, it really does stress them in some areas. They were already really not very deep on the perimeter. So this could end up really hurting them, and you're right. Tom Izzo has definitely done this before, and the NCAA tournament is no lock. The good thing for Michigan State is that the field's so weak this year. I mean, right now, Joe Lunardi is the ESPN bracketologist, and I think he made up that title a few years ago, and he has them as a 6 seed still, even
wow.
at 12 and 7. But if you look at the bottom of the bracket right now, it really is weak. I think if Michigan State gets 19 wins, which would be 11 and 7 in the Big Ten, they're a lock. I think even if they get to 18, which sounds low, but they have the number 3 strength of schedule in the country right now, and that schedule should pay off for them. I mean, I think they're going to make it. and I think it's probably less wins than some people might think. But hey, now you lose Lucius, and if they drop a couple home games here, which is certainly possible, then it really could be a nervous March.
Exactly right. I thought the Wisconsin game a couple weeks ago where they were down 8 with 2.5 to play and wound up forcing the game into overtime and wound up winning it. I thought, now that's the kind of victory that can turn a season around, but it hasn't.
Right. The guy who hit the winning or the tying shot there was Corey Lucius.
There you go. Right.
which, by the way, was like the one basket he's hit in the last 3 games. But yeah, I mean, no question. I mean, that game and the Northwestern game easily could have been losses. So, yeah, you're right. It's one of those games you think, well, maybe this will be it. But they still, are not playing well enough to go to Illinois and Purdue and win in those places. And now they've got a little bit of a schedule break. Michigan, it's a rivalry game. That's not going to be easy. And Indiana coming in and then at Iowa. If they can win the next 3, which I think they should be able to, then maybe they'll have more confidence and be able to get some bigger wins later.
Joe, before we let you go, our guest Joe Rexrode of the Lansing State Journal. The last time you and I talked was Bowl Week when you were down in Orlando, Florida. And I thought going into that game that Michigan State's best chance, perhaps their only chance against Alabama, would be if Alabama sort of looked past the game, didn't get up for the game, sort of ho-hummed the thing. Obviously, Alabama didn't. What effect did that crushing loss have on the MSU football program?
I predicted that, right? 42
Yes,
points?
You did. Yes.
Did I say that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, on the team, I mean, I tell you, that was something to see. What an unbelievable team Alabama is. And Michigan State certainly didn't play well, but my goodness, Alabama was really good, and obviously they were taking out frustration for Auburn on that day. Yeah. But I don't. As far as the impact on the team, I mean, I even after the game, some of the guys were able to say, well, we won a championship, and this doesn't ruin everything. But certainly, it was a tough way to end. I mean, it's embarrassing. It has to be them to have such a build up for a game with Nick Saban and all that, and then for them to lose like that. You wonder if it has any effect on the program. I mean, does it affect recruiting? Recruiting seems to be going well, but they did lose Doran Grant, the number 1 cornerback in the nation, who was at that game, actually.
Right.
Because he was down there for an All-Star game, and like 3 days later, he picked Ohio State.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe nationally it could hurt them a little bit, and certainly they've got some wounds to lick now.
Absolutely. Time will tell. Spring practice actually right around the corner. Thanks so much, Joe Rexrode. We appreciate it.
All right, Rich, good talking to you. Thanks.
All right, was Joe Rexrode, Lansing State Journal, our guest. Take a break. Be back with more here on MPS in the Morning. And Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick on this Thursday morning. I also get to guest host tomorrow, and then Michael will be back with you next week. We're joined right now by Jace Bolger, the Speaker of the Michigan State House of Representatives. The headline in the Detroit News this morning: state employees, same-sex partners to get health benefits. That much, Mr. Speaker, is true, but this it's not just same-sex partners. It's actually the ruling by the State Civil Service Commission covers anyone who has lived with another person, a state employee, for 1 year, correct?
That's correct. Good morning, Rich.
Hi, good morning.
I'd say it's just absolutely irresponsible. We look at it, and my initial reaction was that it was a shame that the Civil Service Commission chose to insert social issues into our fiscal crisis. But then as you dig in and you start to look at it, it's much bigger than that. And it's just irresponsible to try to put the state on the hook for that much liability, because it's not putting the state on the hook, it's putting Michigan taxpayers on the hook. At the very time we need to get control of our costs, and we need to rein in benefit expenses, they are blowing it wide open and expanding it.
It's the price tag on this $5.7 million, correct?
I don't think it's. I think it's far exceeded that. That price tag was back from 2004 when it was talking about same sex.
Mm-hmm.
So this goes far beyond it. Plus, I don't believe that estimate included this ruling, which adds dependents of those roommates, boyfriends, girlfriends, same sex or not, who have been living with somebody for more than a year.
Mm-hmm. What, if anything, can you do about this?
We're exploring that at this point, and the difficulty, the frustration at this point is it seems that they've really tried to do an end run around the Constitution. The way the Constitution is set up, however, is the Civil Service Commission is in charge of it. So that's what's really irresponsible and frustrating is we are exploring options that we have. This, we'll explore every option that we have, but this fiscal impact is what's really it puts us in further dire straits. and it really creates difficulty as we try to balance the budget.
Speaking of which, that is the number one issue. It seems to me Governor Snyder didn't offer any specifics during the State of the State address last week. I don't think anyone expected that he would. However, he is promising quick action on the budget. Where does the budget process stand right now? And outline the tough decisions that you guys have got to make.
The governor has spoken. He has until mid-March, technically, to introduce a budget, but he does not intend to take it that far. He does not intend to take extra time. So we expect mid-February the governor will propose his budget to the legislature. And then we've got to get to work to get that done because we want to have that done by June 1st. But what this does is it throws further uncertainty, and it throws an additional cost, a significant additional cost on the backs of Michigan taxpayers that we're going to have to try to figure out how we deal with.
By law, the budget has to be balanced, correct?
It does. It absolutely does. First for responsibility, but then ultimately because it's constitutionally required.
Sure.
Now, what we have to do as we do that, I believe, is we have to live within our means, meaning Lansing for too long has sought to make revenues match its anticipated expenses. We've got to do just the opposite. We understand where revenues are going to be. We've got to rein in our expenses to match those revenues. We cannot make it more expensive to provide a job in Michigan, or we're going to chase jobs away.
I guess my primary concern falls in education. There's been I got an email last week from the superintendent of schools in the district where my daughter attends school, saying that they could potentially in our suburban Detroit district lose $1,400 a year per student if a plan that's being bandied about, which would combine K through 12 education with higher education funding, goes through. What have you heard about that?
I certainly think education is a priority, and we have to make sure that education dollars are spent on education. We absolutely have to look at the per pupil and make sure that schools are getting the resources that they need. I'm not sure where he's getting those numbers or how he's viewing that, but I've not heard anything like a reduction to the per pupil that's anywhere near that.
Well, that's good news.
We have difficult decisions that we've got to make, but we also have to do that recognizing that not all spending is the same. We have to prioritize. I believe public safety, education, and roads have to be our top priorities.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get a lot of argument there. How much of the budget do you? What sort of a deficit are we facing?
We're facing between 1.5 and 1.8 billion dollars.
Yikes! So you're talking about huge reductions.
Yeah, in the total budget, yes, we're talking out of a $44 billion budget, but less than $9 billion that is general fund, and that's where we have to make the reduction. So yes, there are very significant changes, reforms that we need to make. There will be short-term pain. I don't see any way around it in order for the state to get on the track for long-term gain.
Explain that to me. When you say general fund spending, all of the entire $1.5 billion has to come out of general fund spending.
It does.
What's general fund spending?
It goes to a variety of areas. Think of the non-general fund as federal dollars that largely pass through. Mm-hmm. So it goes to virtually almost every area of state government, but within those areas of state government, you also have federal pass-through dollars. So it's mixed together, but we don't have control over the federal dollars. We have control over those state dollars. And some of that gets to be matching. So when we look at our social safety net, we have to be sure that we're not providing a hammock. We have to provide the ability for people to become independent, break that dependency. So while the federal government may have programs, there are state match dollars, and that's where we can look at things like a 4-year cap on able-bodied adults for welfare. That's where we can look at the bridge card abuse and make sure that tax dollars are not being used by people who are on the system.
And you're talking about a state with one of the highest unemployment rates in the nation. We're up over, continue to be up over 13%. Those people aren't paying taxes.
That's correct. And what we have to do ultimately is focus on jobs. That has to be our overarching issue, our overarching goal, because that impacts our families first and foremost. Everybody wants the opportunity to provide for themselves and to make their life better, and that comes through a good-paying job. It also impacts our communities, every aspect of a community, from kids in school to people volunteering to donations to nonprofits. And then ultimately, it impacts the state budget. And what we've seen in Lansing is a focus on revenue. We have to be sure that we chase jobs, not revenue. That's what will lead to our long-term health.
Jace Bolger, the Speaker of the Michigan House our guests here this morning on MPS in the Morning. How ideally would you create jobs? We talk about this till we're blue in the face. What's your plan?
What we have to understand is that government won't create jobs. It'll be the individuals in our communities, particularly the small businesses in our community, that will create jobs. So there are three key things I believe that we need to focus on, and that is government and spending reform, just as we spoke of. We need to be sure that we don't make it more expensive for them to provide a job, or they won't provide jobs. They'll leave the state. The second is we have to adopt tax reform. We have to have a lower, broader, simpler tax structure, one that doesn't seek more revenue from the current amount of economic activity, instead one that rewards success and allows people to succeed. And that's where I say the long-term fiscal health will come from that additional economic activity, the additional growth. And then we also have to have regulatory reform. Michigan has built a patchwork of regulation that does not protect its citizens, that exceeds the requirements of the federal government and puts us at a competitive disadvantage to our surrounding states. So we have to take up things and consider anything that would make Michigan a more competitive place to provide a job. I think we have to operate all of that within responsible leadership.
Here's what
we have to lead by example. The legislature's taken a 10% pay cut. We have to continue to look at that.
There you go. Here, with all due respect, is what I don't understand. It was said that the Bush tax cuts, the ones that were just renewed, would create jobs when they were enacted in the early 2000s. 2002, I think, is when those tax cuts went into effect. And instead, we lost 8 million jobs. And they keep saying, well, if you cut taxes, it will create jobs. Where are the jobs?
Let's look at the reverse. Let's look at the experience in Michigan in 2007 when we were facing very similar budget deficits. The mantra at that point was that we couldn't make any further reductions. We had to have more revenue. Taxes were raised. The new Michigan business tax was put in, and then a 22% surcharge was put on that. The income tax was raised. Here we are, a mere 4 years later. We've got the same budget deficit, and we're taking in $1 billion less in revenue because we've lost jobs. We've chased those jobs away. Not every other state is in our situation. We are leading the nation. We're in the top 4 for unemployment in our country. That's what we have to reverse.
Well, we have to reverse that, and it seems to me we've lost, this nation has lost so many manufacturing jobs, and it's hard to imagine a state more dependent on manufacturing jobs than was Michigan.
That's very true, but we have to look, a lot of car jobs have headed to other states, not just other countries.
Okay.
So we have lost a lot of factories, a lot of opportunities in Michigan to our states in the United States of America. So we have to look at how we become more competitive. But that competitive is indeed not just competitive within our country. We are competing on a national stage, and we have to make sure that we understand that, and we have to evaluate that way.
Okay, Mr. Boulder, I'll tell you what. It's hard to find consensus, oftentimes in terms of politics. But one thing I think we can all agree on is that, we hope you guys can solve these problems. There's no doubt about that.
We're committed to working together in a bipartisan way. Jobs for Michigan workers should be a bipartisan issue.
Thanks for your time, Mr. Boulder.
All right, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, Jace Boulder, the Speaker of the Michigan House of Representatives. We'll take a break, come back with more here on MPS in the Morning. Paul Eisenstein from the DetroitBureau.com will join us right after the break. All right? We'll be back. And Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick this morning. Pistons lost last night. Red Wings won last night. Michigan State play basketball tonight. Right now, we're going to talk a bit about automobiles. We were talking earlier this morning about the first Volt being sold to a Michigan resident, a guy from Lansing. Saw online that a dealership in New York State had Volts in stock, and he flew to New York, bought his Volt, and drove it back right here to Lansing, as a matter of fact. So the electric car movement is underway now, and we're joined by Paul Eisenstein of the DetroitBureau.com. And not only, Mr. Eisenstein, the Lansing man going to New York to buy his Volt, but yesterday Vice President Joe Biden saying that he wants to see the United States have 1 million electric vehicles on the road by the year 2015.
Yeah, it's an amazing number, isn't it? The administration has been very clearly committed to electric power. They have spent several $billions both in grants and in federal loans to try to ramp up the American capability to produce battery power, and that's a significant amount of money. This is a technology that a lot of countries, China in particular, are hoping to get the global control of. So the fact that this administration is not allowing us to become a second-rate nation when it comes to battery power is pretty impressive.
There were some proposals from the Vice President yesterday. The government currently offers a $7,500 tax credit to consumers who purchase an electric vehicle. The Obama administration would like to transform that tax credit into a cash rebate that would help consumers afford the cost of the car.
Yeah, the problem is right now, everybody talks about this. As a matter of fact, when you hear prices for things like the Volt or the Nissan Leaf, people tend to give you the price after the $7,500 tax credit.
There you go, okay.
The reality is that to get that credit, you have to wait. It's not something you're going to get the moment you walk into the showroom, like a traditional incentive, a rebate or other cash give back. So the government wants to basically turn it into the same sort of incentive that you get from the automakers when you're buying some other car.
How good are the electrics right now?
Well, that's a little complex. In terms of where battery power has been in the past, they're phenomenal. You still have a lot of the basic issues. Batteries are expensive. Batteries still have limited range. They weigh a lot. So there are drawbacks to that. They take a while to charge. So if you think that batteries are just simply going to be the plug-in-the-wall equivalent of filling your car up, no, you have to understand that operating one of these vehicles is different than it is to operate a conventional car. But it's surprisingly good. You drive the Chevy Volt, and when it's operating on electric power, you really don't even notice, except the fact that they're incredibly, very nicely quiet vehicles. That's, I think, why the Chevy Volt has done so well in the American imagination. I'm one of the jurors on the North American Car and Truck of the Year jury, and I'll be quite open. I gave the Volt my primary, my biggest share of my vote. The group as a whole, all 49 of us judges, named it the North American Car of the Year, and I think it was because it was pretty transparent. Once the battery runs down, the gasoline engine kicks in, and you can really drive this thing every day and not have to worry constantly about running out of battery.
How, in terms of a learning curve basically, with respect to electric cars, where will they be 5 years from now in terms of the key issue would be range?
Well, that's part of the problem. Nobody really knows. The lithium batteries that we're seeing coming out on the road right now are a marked improvement over the battery technology of the past. Nickel metal hydride most recently, and of course lead acid and nickel cadmium before them. It gets better range, it's smaller and lighter. It's not cheaper, but the prices are expected to fall. What they call the power density, how much power you can put into a given mass. Think of it this way. Everybody expects that within about 5 years, if you had the equivalent of a standard battery, the type you put in your flashlight, you'll probably see that battery double or more in terms of how much power it puts out. Or conversely, you would see a C battery shrink to the size of a AA, and the price will go down as well. So that's a big improvement. But here's the flip side. Here's a critical thing to realize, that the best batteries out there right now, lithium batteries, hold only about as much as 1% of the energy of an equivalent mass of gasoline. So, in other words, that AA battery that you have would hold, if that was gasoline, you'd have 100 times more energy in that same size, of that same amount of gasoline.
Wow. Well, and that's going to be the focus of the R&D, the technology moving forward.
Well, that's part of it. Improving charging time will be critical, and of course, reducing the cost. Those are the three challenges that battery makers have. Bring the cost down, increase the amount of energy they can store, and make it quicker and quicker and quicker to charge them.
All right, exciting times. Thank you, Mr. Eisenstein.
Good to be with you.
All right, Paul Eisenstein of thedetroitbureau.com. Check him out online. Rich Kincaid in for Michael Patrick Shields here on Thursday morning. We'll take a break and be back with more. And we find ourselves, at least here on the Avenue of Michigan, with a bit of a hazy morning as we take a look towards the state capitol, located just a few blocks To our west, not as cold as it has been, though. We're in the low 20s here, and that's probably the case pretty much across our state, no matter where you happen to be right now. Well, 250,000 Michigan residents, 250,000 Michigan residents have concealed weapons permits. As matters stand right now, you are not allowed to carry a gun into so-called no-carry or gun-free public zones, which include places like sports stadiums, schools, university dormitories and classrooms, daycare centers, churches, hospitals, and casinos. Well, a Michigan lawmaker, a Republican from Mayville, Mike Green, wants to change that. He's introduced a bill in the Senate that would permit anyone with a concealed carry permit to carry a weapon, well, anywhere that they want to. Senator Green, welcome to the program this morning. Thanks for joining us. And I'll tell you what, you're going to have to convince me on this one.
Well, it's not hard to understand it if you really get the truth. And so I'm ready to convince.
Well, go ahead. Give me the truth here, because to me, it just this sounds like a bad idea on its face.
Okay, it was 10 years ago when we first introduced legislation to create a concealed weapons process that allowed anyone to get a concealed weapon if they were good, honest, law-abiding citizens. They were trained, they were tested, they didn't have any mental problems in their background, they weren't a felon or a high misdemeanor, and the gun boards had to give them the concealed weapons permit. And it was called the Shall Issue Bill. And to get that legislation passed, we had to put some gun-free zones where there was numerous legislators fearful of these good, honest, law-abiding citizens going to these gun-free zones and shooting up the place. And we tried to convince them that, that was not the norm, that it happened in any other state. 32 states had already passed it. But still, to get the bill passed, we thought, well, let's put them in there so we'll prove our point that we're just talking about good, honest, law-abiding citizens. And so for the last 10 years, we've proven, because of the record states and most folks that were against it before, have said that, we believe that there hasn't been any problems, that it is true, that there are times when people need something like this to protect themselves. And so we just believe it's a constitutional right, that people have the right to bear arms, to defend themselves, and it's been reaffirmed by the Supreme Court that it is. And we just don't feel like your constitutional rights stop when you go into another building.
Such as a sports stadium.
Yes.
Yeah. So no, I don't know. I just have a problem. Gerald Loeffner got his gun legally. The guy that shot up all those people in Tucson. I mean, and the list goes on of people that have obtained their guns legally, who are permitted to carry, and then bang, they snap or what have you. And I don't understand why we would want more guns in more places.
Well, anybody can get a gun legally. That's not the issue, and anybody can carry in most states open. Even in Michigan, you can carry open without a permit. What this does is give someone a concealed weapons permit to carry it concealed, which nobody can see it, and according to law, they cannot even allow anyone to see it. It has to be concealed to the point where it's not open to the public. And again, you find these people that have these concealed weapons permit are good, honest, law-abiding citizens. In many instances, people with the permits that carry concealed have been able to stop problems that's happened that someone else couldn't have.
Okay. I'd like to hear what you have to say about this at 888-900-9966. That's 888-900-9966. Should the concealed carry permit be extended to anywhere that you go here in the state of Michigan? Senator Mike Green is our guest. He sponsored the pending legislation in the state Senate. What sort of future do you anticipate for this bill?
Well, we've been promised a hearing, and I believe if we get a hearing, it'll pass out. It's in the Judiciary Committee. We have a lot of support in the House and the Senate for the bill. So we're not sure where the governor would stand on it, but that's not our role. Our role is to pass legislation that we believe is right and send it on to the next venue. So probably we'll not have any hearings till later in the year. The majority leader really wants to get the finances straightened out in the state and the jobs problem hopefully worked on. But I'm expected to have some hearings later in the year, and I expect it to pass out of the Senate.
Let's go to Kathy real quick. Kathy, you're on the air on this issue.
All right, here's the deal. The permit thing actually helps track guns that are used in crimes. Okay, so that's one aspect that is a positive, because people who are going to commit crimes don't get their guns legally.
All right, Kathy, thanks for your thoughts. Senator Green, thanks for joining us this morning. We'll keep track of the issue.
Thank you. Nice talking.
Nice chatting with you. Mike Green, who's the author of the bill in the state Senate to, well, expand the concealed permit law here in the state of Michigan. Want to hear from you on this issue and others. 888-900-9966. That is the number to call. In the next hour, we'll be talking with Rick Comley, the MSU hockey coach who announced yesterday that he is leaving at the end of the year. That and a lot more coming up as MPS in the Morning continues.